Hi there. My name is Deanne Battle, and this is, surprisingly, episode 9 of the Composite, which is a hodgepodge of late night ramblings, musings. We'll go with that. So for those, that have been, going back to Instagram or to YouTube to check out the former episodes, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I know there are a few of you out there. If you are looking at it on YouTube, if you could subscribe to the channel, that would be helpful. Just so I can know, should these episodes live there, or are people interested, things like that. And I am Deanne Battle, if I didn't say it before. But thanks for joining me. So I'm going to start off here in the first few seconds with a couple of disclaimers. So the heavy breathing in the background is the dog. Now she's super sweet, but she needs a lot of attention. So anytime that I'm on my phone like this, going live, she's like, what's going on? So that is the first disclaimer. The second disclaimer is you might hear children in the street. It's 10 p.m., but they were in the street at like 11:15 or 11:30 last night. I was like, okay, it's a Sunday. It's Father's Day. And there were like 7 or 8, like kids. I mean, under the age of 13, kids running and yelling in the street. And, I noticed because they were outside of my window, first of all, but second of all, I noticed because they were irritating the dog and the dog started barking. And so I was just like, wow, it's 11:15 or 11:30 at night. This is how we're living. But I mean, I don't have kids at the moment, so God bless. I guess it was just kind of like, just go outside and make it happen because school is not going on right now. But that's late. Back in my day, it was like the street light came on, time to take your little ass home. But not like that anymore. So different times. I guess they figure if the kids actually get abducted, they have a phone. Maybe they just track them that way. Or maybe they figured, well, shoot, nobody's trying to steal these kids, so just go have fun. But that was a very interesting observation last night. So I have a little list here. So today is a federal holiday. Happy Juneteenth. I could do a longer commentary on that because I see some memes or some social media posts about Juneteenth that are a bit problematic. It's a very specific holiday. It's not like Juneteenth, yay, Black people. It's a specific holiday. And so I have a feeling that, in a year or two, it's going to be completely divorced from this idea of liberation and celebrating the triumph of Black American people in the United States. But see, this is what I'm talking about. Okay. No. Down. No. I took her outside already. So this should not be taking place. My apologies. No. Okay. So yes, happy Juneteenth. Even with, like I said, some of the problematic elements that I'm seeing in terms of how people are choosing to describe it, commemorate it. Nevertheless, it is an important moment to recognize in the history of this nation. I'm very proud to be an American and of my heritage and that of my ancestors in this country. I started back in February or March, started working with the African American Museum in Washington, D.C. And I don't know if they're still doing it, but they have, you can get an hour or so of free genealogy help. And it's just been an emotional time for me because I've just been able to see wow, on both sides of the family, Civil War veterans, preachers, farmers, people just with interesting lives, just looking at their paperwork, seeing when they got their marriage license, how many children that they had, that the fact that they generally tended to live down the street from their parents and their uncles and their aunts and cousins and everything. And so it's really made that legacy, tying it back to Juneteenth of what my people have experienced. It's made it more real, and it's made me more grateful. So anybody else that's living in that space right now, again, congratulations. We're still here, and we're still moving forward, and may each year get us closer to liberation, to equality, to healing, to being whole. So happy Juneteenth. Now I'm just realizing I wanted to show you all something, and it is across the room. So just give me a quick second here. Apologies. Okay. So I had coffee with a coworker, and they gave me a super cool gift that I just had to show you. So this is the horror movie periodic table on a throw pillow, and it's amazing. So, a periodic table organizing the different elements. And so the way they've broken this out here is that in terms of horror movies, you have different categories, right? So you have slashers, creepy kids, mad scientists, psychopaths, anthologies, supernatural, vampires, werewolves, zombies, classics, animals, aliens, diseases, and sequels. I wonder why there's not, a supernatural category. But I feel like demons and / exorcisms or whatever is its own category. Ghosts should be a separate category. But, the cool thing about this is, so like I said, my coworker, he gave this to me, and I just sat there and counted. And so there are like 80 something, different movies listed here. And I think I'm only missing 3. I was like, wow, I've watched a lot of horror movies. And I am a horror fan, but it's like, funny sometimes, like if you say you're a fan of something, it's like, yeah, I'm a fan of this, but it's just like, oh, do you have the credentials behind it? But I'm just like, no, apparently I do have the credentials behind it. Like here, I'm just going to say, pick random ones from each category. Psycho, yep, definitely saw that. Children of the Corn, definitely saw that. The Human Centipede, saw that, regretted seeing that. I'm not watching the sequel. That was one of the movies, I'd have to say, Human Centipede, Midsommar. There are just certain horror movies that after watching it, it just made me think about, maybe I should reconsider certain life choices here. Other stuff. Saw, yeah, that's saw that one. I saw. That one, I'm not gonna lie, at the end of the first, movie in the franchise, is it giving it away? I don't know if it's a spoiler. Carrie Ellis, something like that. Anyway, Wesley from The Princess Bride. At the end of the movie, he just does something, in my opinion, that's just so stupid. And it's very gruesome, but I just laughed for the last 10 minutes. I'm like, this is ridiculous. But nevertheless, I did see it. Other movies here. Paranormal Activity, yes. Blade, yes. Oh, Blade, classic. And I just have some reservations about the remake, Mahershala Ali, I believe, is a really great actor, but I don't know what the the stunts or the martial arts dynamic part of the story of the franchise. I don't know what that's going to look like with him. I don't really see him, slicing and dicing it up the way Wesley did, but we'll see. Other things here. The Howling, yes, that's a great one, classic. Return of the Living Dead, other ones. I'm just literally picking random stuff. Dracula, yes. Orca. Now, Orca, I haven't seen that one. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, yes. 28 Days Later, yeah, that's one of my favorite ones. And Aliens, yes. I love the Alien series. I really enjoy James Cameron just in general as a director. Okay, so this pillow was a super cool segue for me to talk about some horror stuff that I've been watching in terms of television. So for those that haven't, been watching these little talks that I've been doing as a talk show, I'm a teacher, and so for the last week and a little bit of change, school year's been over, and I've been decompressing because I'm teaching a summer school program that starts tomorrow. And so it was just an opportunity for me to, relax and veg out. I don't really during the school year get to, really have any fun. And so it was an opportunity for me to do that. And so what have I been up to? Well, not really leaving the house the way that I could / or should. And part of that has been exacerbated by the fact that there's a huge chunk of I-95 that has, become defunct, not too far from where I live. So, I'm originally from New York, but I'm in the, Pennsylvania area. And, but, I have most of my family and friends are still in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. And then, I have family members in the South as well. But I've been too scared to look, to be frank, to see what the damage is in terms of, if I want to drive to the South or to Connecticut or whatever, how is the construction on that area going to affect me? Because I just don't want to get annoyed. But yeah, I'll have to bite that bullet eventually just to see, okay, if I'm going to X place, what are the detours? What's the new route? So on and so forth. But yes, not getting out as much as I should or I would like to, but I'm catching up on shows and stuff. So I think, what I'm going to do for the next little bit of time here is do 3 show reviews. I'll try really hard not to do spoilers. I think I'm pretty decent at that. So the first one is for the deadheads, as my mom likes to call them. The Walking Dead Dead City premiered last night. Now, I will give you a little bit of background in terms of The Walking Dead. Overall, I can say I was a decent fan. And in the sense that I would say the first 3 seasons, I was watching every single episode live. I was there Sunday at 9 AMC. I'm tuned in. I'm plugged in. I read the comics up until I think I got up until issue 165-ish, somewhere in there. And although I had to restart it because there were just certain things that were happening to women and children in the Walking Dead series, the comic series versus the television series, that were a little harsh and a little jarring in that comic format. And so I just had to sit it down, and then, I restarted it later. But I was really into it the first 3 seasons. from Rick being in the hospital to going to the CDC to the farmhouse to the prison, totally invested. But something around season 7, and I think it was a combination of things, right? And the introduction of the character Negan. I won't tell you anything about that character if you don't know who or what he is or does. Was really harsh and brutal in an absolutely iconic sort of way, in a very sadistic sort of way. But just, for me, that was when The Walking Dead shifted from being a show about surviving the zombie apocalypse. And really, I think what was very apparent as, a fan of the show, the ways in which the writers and the actors created a sense of family and community among the characters who were trying to survive. And what does that look like when we break down the barriers between the different identities? And at the end of the day, we want the human race to survive. Like, what are we going to do together to create something new to make that happen? And I think that was really the focus of the show up until season 7. Now, season 7, I kind of watched spottily, and then I just stopped watching it because to me it just became, The Walking Dead became a paramilitary show. It was just like every season, it was just like, oh, here's a new villain and here's a new beef that we have and here's some new terrible things that they've done to us and here's some new people that they've hurt or killed and here is the group. It was almost, it became a show, I think, from season 7 on about guerrilla warfare, and then the zombies were just kind of a bonus, I guess. And it's just like, I just didn't really have that much of an interest. But here's what I did, because I knew it was ending. Last summer, I was moving from the South and I was coming back, to this area in Pennsylvania, and I was staying at my parents' house. And so I just, caught up. I said, well, let me see, what's going on. And so I watched from season 7 to 11 just to get through it. And so I got through it. There were some new characters that were introduced that I liked. Jerry's an awesome character. Princess is an awesome character. Mercer is okay. Who else? Connie is a good character. So they introduced some new characters, really focused on broadening the spectrum of diversity on the show and things like that. So there were things that I saw that they were doing that I liked, but it just, again, it wasn't the same show. And so I will say, though, in the defense of, the team that created it, it's like, to a certain extent, how long can you maintain that level of intensity? So, to be fair, maybe the show that I was so invested in, maybe it wasn't sustainable at that level of intensity, because I would say, like, when they introduced the character of the governor, that whole stretch that was a lot. That was intense in terms of, the antagonism between the different communities, who died, how they died, all of that stuff. Like I said, I'm just trying to kind of talk around things so there aren't any spoilers. And so that was The Walking Dead, the main series. Now, there were several spin-offs. Tales of The Walking Dead, which is like more of an anthology series. I saw a couple of episodes. From the couple of episodes I saw, that's more jokes, to be honest, in terms of just like little incidentals. I don't know how many episodes. I think they did maybe 6 to 8 episodes of that, like short episodes. But I only saw the first 2. I mean, it was cute. Just kind of as a snack, if you will, in between mid-season versus end of season, or in between one season ending and another season beginning. So there was that. That was okay. There was a version Beyond The Walking Dead, or something to that effect. it's like Walking Dead, it meets Nick Jr. or like the Disney Channel, and it's the kids version of The Walking Dead. And I saw the preview in a clip and I was like, yeah, this shit looks stupid. I'm not watching this. Because they're like kids in the zombie apocalypse, da 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 da. But then it's like, it seems like they just end up being left to their own devices somehow, which just seems weird, because I feel that you know the adults in the situation would be overprotective, right? If you had kids and you were trying to help them survive through the zombie apocalypse. So I didn't watch that. Now, Fear the Walking Dead was the first spinoff. I watched that for about 2 seasons and then 2 additional episodes. Here's the thing. I felt like plot-wise, it was more consistent and more plausible than the main Walking Dead show. But the characters sucked. I was like, I don't like any of these people. Madison, her kids, her stepkids, her annoying boyfriend. I was like, bite all of them. I don't like these people. The only exception was there was, and because I only watched the first couple of seasons, there was a Latino gentleman, and he was an older gentleman, and he played the father of one of the main characters. Really good acting. From that guy. And so for me, I felt like he was the only character that I really, had a bit of respect for. Not a bit, like had respect for. The other characters, I was just like, I just kept waiting for them to die. I was like, there are not enough people dying here right now. So that's a problem. What does it mean when you have, a better plot, but, the characters are not as relatable? So I didn't really get into that, although I might check it out because, folks, Dead City, not great right now. So the first episode, if you're familiar with the characters, Dead City is a Maggie and Negan focused spinoff. And, won't give you any spoilers, but somehow they end up all the way north, right? In the mid-Atlantic region in New York City, in Manhattan. And it kind of felt like Three's Company plus zombies, right? So I'm dating myself. So if you know what Three's Company is, right? All these random people living together or just kind of ending up thrown together hey, kooky goings on during the zombie apocalypse. And so it's just kind of like, wah, wah. I just don't know the premise that they've set up, how much steam they're going to get out of it. Now, to be fair, Maggie, I think, has had a good character arc from the main Walking Dead show, because when she was first brought into the show, I was like, oh my gosh, I do not like this character. But her leadership and her strength and resilience and stuff like that have really made her more of an endearing character. Now, Negan, right, the name that I mentioned to you before, they're doing this redemption arc. But again, given the way that he was brought on the show, it's like, how do you come back from that? He's supposed to be a good guy now. I'm still not buying it. Now, as a villain, great. But just as a do-gooder guy trying to get in there and help Maggie out and stuff like that, I'm just like, it was a decent episode. The effects were good. The effects were really good. But other than that, I don't know plot-wise in terms of how much steam they'll get out of it. So what I said I would do is I said, okay, I'll watch the first premiere episode and then maybe watch 1 or 2 more episodes. But if by episode 3, if they don't clean up the plot, I don't think I'm going to stay with that. Right, so that's Walking Dead, Dead City. That's the newest one. Now, the second newest would be Black Mirror, which hovers between sci-fi and horror, right? And so I had seen all of the previous 5 seasons of Black Mirror. I even watched the standalone Bandersnatch episode. And then they had season 6 that came out on Thursday or Friday. And so I watched it over the weekend. It was good. It was good overall, but it was different. It was different. And so, when my coworker, gave me this pillow, I was trying to articulate, well, what did I feel was different about it? So for those of you that are unfamiliar with the Black Mirror show, and it's on Netflix, it's an anthology series, right? And so each episode stands alone, although they try to have crossovers between the episodes. So sometimes you'll see one character and then they're the main character in one episode, and then they're, a background character passing through another episode, or some brand name or something will be mentioned in one episode and then it pops up in a different episode. So there are little nods like that where they try to have Easter eggs that tie the episodes together. But this season, so it's season 6, and I believe it's been 3 or 4 years since they did season 5. So to a certain extent, it's a little bit of a reboot, but it's so different because, Black Mirror is really, from a philosophical standpoint, I think examining how technology and our interaction with it can be horrible, right? Literally, and thinking about the implications of that culturally, ethically. And so there's a technology element in every episode, but usually the way it's set up is it's like there's this character or these characters living their life, but here's this tech thing that can make it so much better. And then you see the person actively making a decision to pursue that technology or to enhance their life in that way, and then it just goes horribly wrong. So that's the gist of the setup. But this season was more subtle and to a certain extent more insidious. Like there were 5 episodes, and I think of all 5 of the episodes, it really felt like, the person, has this, they only have bad options, right? And so what does it mean when you have this tech element that's superimposed on you already? So you haven't had the initial choice of, here's my regular life, and then here's my life amped up with this like tech element, whether it's AI, whether it's robotics, whether it's, being surveilled, things like that. So it's not like you go from A and then you go to B and you're like, oh crap, I shouldn't have chose B. B is terrible. It's like things are pretty bad. And then here's bad choice A and bad choice B. And so it was really, I felt quieter, the choices that they made with the season. And, meaning there weren't these like big splashy elements that they were looking at. But it was just, it felt they were, how do I articulate this? It really felt like the writers of season 6 were really trying to think about these elements exist. They're already with us. And so whether it's artificial intelligence or whether it's, again, being surveilled, or the ways in which people use media as negative platforms, or the ways in which we use technology to sensationalize terrible people, so on and so forth. I'm just trying to talk around the plot of some of these episodes. But it says, okay, so this is already happening. Now how are you going to cope with it? And so it felt different. It was a different season. Now, I thought it was good. I thought it was cool that they had, some big name actors, Salma Hayek and Aaron Paul, Josh Hartnett, Zazie Beetz. Those are just the names that I'm thinking of right now. There might have been one or two other people that I've definitely seen before. So that was cool. And the episodes varied in length. Some of them were even almost like feature length episodes. And so just that variability alone, it varied the rhythm of it and felt, it kept my interest definitely. So I think that was a good season, but it just, in terms of unity, felt pretty different from the first 5 seasons. I would be curious, because I haven't kept up with American Horror Story for the last 3 or 4 seasons. I would be interested to see, comparatively, the last season of American Horror Story, in terms of quote unquote unity, how it compares to the previous seasons versus Black Mirror. They have different subject matter, but I think their composition, in terms of how they approach the horror genre, is somewhat similar. So that was good. All right. So we've got, just as a recap, we've got The Walking Dead, Dead City. So I'll give it 3 episodes. Black Mirror, yeah, check it out if you watch the previous seasons. It's definitely worth a view. Now, the last television horror review here, which is the least recent because it was released in January, would be The Mayfair Witches. And R.I.P. Anne Rice, she passed away last year, but definitely one of my favorite authors, very influential. I used to read a lot of her stuff when I was, a kid and a teenager. I don't know if that was the best thing, but just really invested in those series. Now, most people know her for Interview with a Vampire, which they also turned into a television show. I might talk about that when they bring it back for season 2. But The Mayfair Witches, I actually enjoy that series more because, of the ways in which it's tracking this family through their different generations and things like that. Now I'm halfway through season 1 of The Mayfair Witches. I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about it because what I remember of the plot of The Mayfair Witches, they've done this hodgepodge and kind of, it feels very different tonally and plot-wise from the books. And I know you're not always able to, maintain that unity from, movie versus book, TV show versus book, but it's not really what I was expecting. And I think one of the main things that resonated with me from the Mayfair Witch novel series is the degree to which, right, so all of these women, going down through the generations, they're witches and, then their daughter inherits that, background or power, so on and so forth. But they're actively choosing the dark side, so to speak. So you're able to see how each character comes to that decision, but in a different way. And the way this TV show is set up right now, the main character, so the main quote unquote witch who's in our modern times, she just seems clueless, like a bit of a victim. And I didn't remember the novels feeling like that. I remember Anne Rice being able to create and compose the character in a way where it felt like, oh, she's making a really bad decision, but I see where she's coming from. I mean, this woman, the way that they're approaching her character now, she's just put upon, And so 4 episodes in, I'm like, I don't know if I would want to keep up with that. I think before the end of the season, I would want to see her be more empowered. I would want to see her say either, no, I'm rejecting, magical powers and being a witch and demons and all this stuff, or saying, yes, I'm all in, And right now she's just kind of like, I'm so confused. I don't know what's going on. This is a whole world I didn't know about. And what am I supposed to do? And she's just this scared little lamb right now, or that's what it's giving. And I'm just kind of like, one thing about horror, I think a horror works, in my opinion, better when you can see the character's thought process. And that was something that I was saying earlier in a discussion today as well. So give you an example. So let's say you have a couple and they want to go on a backpacking trip, right? So in a horror movie, that shit is not going to work out. You always know that. But what makes a difference is, okay, you see them, we're going to go on a backpacking trip. And they always see some drifter or something, and they befriend him, and they start talking to him. And then you're just sitting there yelling at the screen because you're like, this is just not realistic. You would never talk to this dude. This dude looks like he's going to kill you, right? So that's one version of a horror movie where you're alienated from the characters because it doesn't look like their initial decisions are realistic. Now, that is different from a couple. They decide they want to go backpacking. They run into the drifter and they're like, oh, hell no. And then they go into the opposite direction and they're like, oh, snap, he, slashed our tires or stole our phones or something like that. Now that is more compelling because it's like, see, man, they did what they were supposed to do and they still got hemmed up, right? Like at this point, I engage with that element more because it's more surprising, meaning that the writer and the directors are not asking you to suspend disbelief when it comes to common sense. And right now, the Mayfair Witches looks like it's asking you to suspend disbelief when it comes to common sense. And I'm just kind of like, wah, 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 wah. But, the full season is up if you have interest. And I'm halfway through. So I think I'll probably, watch through to the end. Not sure if I'll check out season 2, right? So out of those 3 shows, 2 so-sos, and 1 definitely check it out. All right. So that was a little bit of a different format tonight, but I was thinking about, when I come on tonight, what sorts of things do I want to talk about? And it just occurred to me, well, that's, kind of how I've spent my weekend. So I thought I would share that. Now, the last thing that I would like to end on goes in a completely different direction. But before I get to that, right, so you'll see, my background's been bare and stuff like that. I have some decorations and stuff in storage that will be with me in the next couple of weeks. So by the time July is here, this will actually look like something. So I'm super excited to share that, and that's coming up. So if you have interest in this content that I'm sharing, stay tuned. All right. Now, the last thing is just something super quick, right? So for those of you that follow, any type of pop culture, reality show type stuff, especially when it comes to hip hop, urban, I don't know what you would call it, related to tangentially anything Black, right? So if you've been, following social media in the last week and some change, or maybe a couple of weeks at this point, the reality stars Jocelyn Hernandez and Amber Rose got into a fight. And, it was around the racial identities and how people categorize themselves and things like that. I'm not going to rehash it because there are a lot of people that have already shared their hot takes on that and things like that. So if you're interested, you can Google it, I guess. There has definitely been a lot of commentary, especially on YouTube and Twitter, I feel like. But for me, the thing that's hilarious about it is, and a question I want you to think about. So when two very problematic people fight, how do you decide which side to take? Because both of those women are super problematic. I mean, Jocelyn's been fighting everyone since day one. And I used to watch Love and Hip Hop and Love and Hip Hop Atlanta. I never watched the stuff in LA or anywhere else because but the New York series, I watched a lot of that. And then the Atlanta series, I would say the first 3 seasons, I was like really, really into it. So it's just interesting that Jocelyn, took time out of her day to call Amber out on race, because I feel like she came onto the scene saying a lot of problematic things about race, like her eventual husband, I think now ex-husband, he at the time was in a very long-term relationship and had a child with a woman named Mimi. And Mimi had a cleaning service, and she just kept calling her Mimi the maid, and oh, you're a maid, all this, that, and the third. And it really felt like she was tying her profession into her race on several occasions. And so I always saw her as someone who, to a certain extent, looked down on Blackness. So it was just very interesting to me that you fast forward to now and she's calling out Amber for looking down on Blackness. But I'm just like, wasn't that you like 5 to 7 years ago? But in the moment of the episode, I think she did, to a certain extent, have a good point. I think Amber Rose is highly problematic, that she's always, or for the majority of the time, in Black spaces and making derogatory comments, especially about Black women. She had this one clip of her, from a few years ago, I believe, talking about growing up in Philly, about how nappy-headed Black girls were jealous of her and wanted to fight her and stuff like that or something. And it was just kind of like, well, why are you always in Black spaces? If you're better than us, see ya. And so this moment, they were on College Hill, which is it was a reboot of College Hill, which was a BET reality show that I saw maybe one episode of. I just didn't have any interest in the premise of it. But so these are two problematic women fighting. And so it's just like, well, damn, whose side do you take? Now, you could just be on the side of who gives a shit. I totally understand that. But I'm just fascinated just to see the discussion in social media about how people justify like whose side they're on versus not and things like that. So something to think about. All right. Well, so let's see. I don't think we have anybody in the room. No. But I'm going to post this episode and, hopefully some people will enjoy it. And, thanks for your time. So this is The Composite. I'm Deanne Battle. Have a good night.